Welcome back to CriCri Aviation. My name is Jim Payne, and in this video we're going to go over the final gluing and riveting of the forward fuselage skin. This is going to also include the final installation of the access panels that I created to be able to access things like the rudder pedals after the airplane is complete. This is something that's not really covered in the plans. Now there are some different methods that you can use to access the area where the rudder pedals are, such as through the nose cone area, or also through behind where the fuel tank is in the airplane. But both of those are fairly difficult to access unless you remove a lot of things on the airplane, such as the instrument panel and the fuel tank, or even the front engine mount if you needed to do any kind of major repairs, or say replace the bungee cords on the rudder pedals, for example. So having these access panels in here is kind of an added feature, just to be able to get access into that area and hopefully not have to disassemble areas of the airplane to be able to do some repairs in the rudder pedal area. So we're going to cover that in this video also. There's also a few other things that I needed to finish underneath that skin in order to install that, that panel, such as I will install a few grommets to be able to run some wiring from the instrument panel up to the nose cone to be able to get to the engines themselves, and also the battery that I'm going to install in the nose. So we're going to cover all that in this video. It's going to be fairly short, so again, thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. Thanks. So one of the things I needed to finish on this front skin before I permanently attached it was these access panels that I had created earlier. So what I did is I cut out on the CNC machine these rings. I pre-drilled the holes for the rivet holes that'll go around the outside, and then number 6 screws, which I'm planning on putting on the inside to hold the cover plate that's going to go on there. So I cut these out on a CNC machine. I'm just putting them, underneath the skin and drilling out the rivet holes all the way around and attaching them. I've got to go back now on the CNC machine and see if I can cut out the rings that go on the inside, the actual cover. Now what I did is I made these out of 40 thousandths, so they're twice the thickness of the skin. That seems to be plenty amount of strength to beef up the skin back again to what it should be prior to cutting it. But let me go ahead and finish installing this other one here. I'm likely going to glue these in. I think that's the best way to get these so that they're secured properly, and that we don't get any water or anything underneath the skin between the two layers. I think it's a good idea to just glue these in. The panel itself, the access panel, I'm not going to obviously do anything but put screws in that. I had originally thought about countersinking screws. It just seems like it's more work than it's worth. So my plan is to just put button head screws number 6 on these panels on the front here. So let me go ahead and get this one drilled out, and I'll go ahead and cut out the actual cover for these in a minute. I'm getting ready to glue and final rivet the forward skin on the fuselage. I did have some things I wanted to clean up on the rudder pedals. I had mentioned before that I was concerned about these. It's easier for you to see on this side. I was concerned about these bungee cords that I had created for the rudder pedals rubbing on the bottom corner here of this piece of metal. As you can see, I've got a little circular piece of aluminum that I wrapped around there to kind of create a radius for this to ride on, but because of the angles here, this cord would want to ride all the way down at the bottom, which would have it rubbing on the edge, the inside edge of that cutout there. So what I did is I just got some rubber tubing that you can see here, and I just folded it around the inside edge, and then I used some safety wire and safety wired it together just to kind of create a, kind of crimp it around there. And then I did attach that another band of safety wire around the rubber and around the rudder tube here, just to kind of keep it in place so it wasn't just kind of floating around if it came loose. But what it allows that to do is the cord now will ride on top of that piece of rubber, and instead of it riding on top of the steel. So I think that's a pretty good solution. I actually did that on all 4 corners, so you can see I did that down here too, where I put a piece of tubing on the inside here, safety wired it. So again, this this rubber band then won't be on the outside edge rubbing against the edge of the aluminum rudder tray there. So it seems to work pretty well. I don't know if I don't actuate this with one hand, but if I push the rudder pedals forward, you'll see this comes loose here, and I just want to make sure that when this tightened back up that it would hit the inside of that rubber there, which it does. It seems to work pretty well, so I didn't know of anything else to do with this. And again, I'm not really sure in the plans, they don't really show you what you should do with it either, because the angle of this coming down at this angle is always going to pull this cord to the outside edge, which is going to have it rubbing on the outside edge of that cutout. I just don't see that there's any other way to protect it, because over time this is just going to start to fray, start to come apart, and eventually it would break. So getting back in here is difficult, so I really didn't want to have to get back in here sooner than later. So so again, I think I've got the rudder pedals taken care of. The tray slides back and forward. It's pretty stiff though. I really have to pull these up and then grab a hold of this in the center from the front and pull it and push it back. I have no idea how this would have worked with the little latches. I mean, I would have had to make this tray really, really loose in order for it to slide back and forth, and I didn't want it rattling. Anyway, it's good enough. I'm not going to be moving it much at all, so I should be able to move it when I need it. But it's not loose and banging around in here. So, all right, I'm going to keep going here. I do have to scuff up these areas that are going to get glued all the way around here before I glue the skin on. It's very critical, I've noticed, with the skin. I don't have it sitting here right now, but the cutout here for the forward cowling and the fact that that's bent up kind of pulls the corners of this in on either side. So when you go to cleco down the front skin, it tends to want to ripple just a little bit between the rivets, because you're trying to pull it back out, and it's creating a little bit of a ripple effect on the outside here. I think, based on the rivet spacing here, that I can pull it tight and it's not going to be bumped up in the middle. At least that's what I'm hoping. I've noticed when I put clecos in every single hole, it seems to be tight down, but if I do like every other hole, I'll all of a sudden get a little bubble in between where the skin pops up from the surface. So I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue. But the other thing I noticed too is that how you put the skin on here, I have had to be really careful on the alignment on the front here, because if I cleco in one side, it'll be probably back about 3 millimeters on this other side, the skin is, and it's very difficult to pull it back forward. So I've noticed I've had to start at the front here, align the two corners, start out with the clecos here, and then work my way back and have it kind of pull a little bit of tension out, again because of that curvature and that little bend that we did for riveting the forward cowling on, kind of I think pulled the two sides in a little bit. But anyway, I'm gonna keep working on this, see if I can get this glued down, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get a little bit further here. So the other cleanup thing I did here is I cut off the steering cable here. I slipped a piece of electrical shrink tubing over the end of it and then cut it off. And then I just used two small tie wraps to just wrap it against here, just to make sure it wasn't sticking out and catching on my leg. That seemed like a good solution. Again, don't know exactly what to do with that, but it seems like it'll be good. So now what I'm going to do is, I only had all the 3/32 holes drilled for this skin on top. I think what I'm going to do is cleco the whole thing in with every single cleco, make sure it's fitting properly. I am going to double check and see if I have any puffing up of the skin in between, and then what I'm going to do is go through and take one cleco at a time and drill it out to the 1/8 inch size for the final rivets. That way I think I can make sure that the skin is perfectly aligned before I glue and pop rivet it in. Originally I was thinking I would just drill them out after I glued it and as I was pop riveting it, but I don't want to get the glue all over the drill bit and everything. I just want to be able to clean it up before I do the final gluing. So that's what I'm going to work on next, is go ahead and get all these holes drilled out to their final size. So you can see as I'm starting to cleco the skin in here that back here it's off. It needs to be pulled out, and I think this is because we bent this lip on the inside of here that it kind of pulled the skin in a little bit, and so you got to stretch it back out. But what does happen then when you do that is, like on this side, let's see, you can see we've got a little bit of spring here, a little bit of spring here, a little bit of spring here and here. They seem to pull down though, when I put the clecos in there, so I think I'm good. It's not springing up down here, so it seems to be aligned properly, you know, on that part, so it just seems to be related to this flange, I believe. But I think it's going to pull down. I don't think I'm going to worry about it. I am going to get all the clecos in, and like I said, I'm going to go one by one and just pull each one of them out and drill it out to the 1/8 inch rivet size so it's ready to go. But otherwise, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to keep going here, get the rest of these clecos in, and then get my drill out and start drilling. So I finished drilling out all the holes, the rivet holes here to 1/8 inch for the forward skin. I did have one other thing I wanted to try and figure out before I glued this skin down, and that was trying to figure out how to get wires. And I got fuel lines, I've got the pitot tube air line that needs to come back, and a lot of that needs to go from up here where I'm going to have a battery. I've got the engines on the pylons, we've got the pitot tube on the front. Most of that needs to go back here behind the instrument panel. Now when you set that skin down over the top here, it curves around the top like this and leaves a hole right here between the forward skin and frame 2 here. So there's a spot where they kind of indicate in the manual you should take the fuel lines, run them up through here and down and then out. But this is a solid piece right here. This is a solid piece right here. And then we've got the solid front here. And I'm a little bit concerned about having any wires or tubing, laying below this frame here because of where your feet are and your shoes are hitting this and rubbing back and forth. So there's not a lot of room to put stuff in here. The ideal place would be inside of here, but I'm going to have to drill some holes in here. So what I got is some grommets, and these are, let me see, these are 7/16 diameter inside, and I think it's a 9/16 hole that I end up drilling through here to put grommets in. So I'm going to put 2 grommet holes in here to install these. I'm going to put 2 grommet holes in this to install these, and I'm going to put 2 grommet holes in the front. And I'm thinking I can feed all of the wiring through there for sure. The question is can I get 2 fuel lines and the pitot tube through those, or if I should maybe run those somewhere else. I'm not exactly sure. I'd like to keep the fuel and electrical in separate areas, so we'll see. But I know I can run those through here, then I can run those just above the landing gear here. And that was my other concern too, is I thought, well, I can attach something to the bottom maybe here that would run along here, but if I did have a hard landing and the nose gear came up, it wouldn't hit this stop. It would hit whatever I had mounted underneath here first, and it would likely bend this or bend that tube or do some damage. I really want the stop to be this sliding up and hitting the stop on the bottom of the nose gear strut. So again, I still think drilling a few holes in here, I don't think it's going to weaken this enough to really matter. The only concern would possibly be this here, because this is what the nose gear hangs on. But again, I'm not concerned about just putting a couple holes in here, fairly small ones. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. I just wanted to verify here what these were. So these are 3/4 inch outer diameter and 7/16 inner diameter, but I think when I drilled the step drill to test the hole, it was a 9/16 hole that fits around these grommets. So I think this is going to work good. That's what I'm going to try and do next. Again, before I install the skin on the top here. I think that's the only thing I had left, other than trying to clean up in here a little bit and then go around and scuff this up for gluing, because this has to be glued all the way around. I do have to get the Aladyne off here and just clean it up a little bit, and hopefully by the end of today I can get that skin glued on and let it dry overnight. Alright, I've got everything cleaned up now. Got all the Aladyne removed where I'm going to put the glue. I've got the sheet metal piece over here cleaned on the back side, so we're going to go ahead and mix up some glue. I'm going to put the glue down. We'll set the top down on top of here, the panel on top, and then I'll just start pop riveting, probably from up front here at these 2 corners to make sure that these align here, and then I'll just work my way back up and down each side, and I'll probably do this part last. But yeah, this should be pretty easy to do. It should go pretty quick. So let me go mix up some glue, and I'll start putting some pop rivets in. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I was able to complete the riveting on the front forward skin here last night. It came out pretty well. I did have some issues. I don't know if you can see it in the light here, but you get the light just right, and you can see a little bit of a high spot in between the rivets where there's a little bit of a pucker around the rivets, and it's mostly concentrated in this area here on each side. It's not really bad. I have seen it, definitely worse on other airplanes, but part of it's from, like I said, stretching this out. But one of the things I did do on this side is I was able to take a clamp like this, and you can put it underneath the fuselage support here and actually clamp like so in between to try and push the skin down, so when it glues down it stays a little bit more flat. I was able to do that in a few spots on this side. This side I had the throttles already mounted in the way and I didn't want to take them off, but they ended up, probably the highest spot is probably this little spot here that I probably should have put a clamp on behind the behind where the throttle controls are, but it looks good. I'm not really concerned about it because it's barely noticeable. If you painted the airplane, I don't think you could even see it. But anyway, yeah, this looked good. It looks good. What I'm going to do now is finish these access panels. I'm going to get the holes drilled to the final 1/8 inch rivet size here. I'm going to glue the bottom ring in, and then once that's all glued in and dried, I will come back and finish the holes on the inside cover piece and put the nut plates that go on the back of that. So I'm going to get these access holes completed next. So I glued and pop riveted the rings that are going to act as the support for the covers that are going on the front here to access the rudder pedals after the airplane's done. Yeah, so these went in. It was very easy. I did glue them in, and I cleaned up very well around this inside edge so that I didn't have any glue that was going to interfere with the fit of the covers that I have actually very precise right now. Trying to make sure there's, trying to limit there being any gap around the outside between the ring and the aluminum. It looks really nice. So what I'm going to work on next is I'm going to get the screw holes drilled into the covers and into this plate, and get ready to drill the holes for the nut plates that are going to go on the back. And that should be pretty straightforward too, so there won't be any gluing on this. It's just a matter of pop riveting the nut plates in and getting the screws so they fit properly, and we should be done with the covers. So this video was taken long after I finished these covers, because you can see the front forward cowling is installed, and so is the nose cone at this point. But I didn't do a video after I got done installing all of the nut plates on these and then actually doing the final fit of these covers. So I did just want to show this to you. Again, it's not a big deal. I just drilled out the holes here for the nut plates, pop riveted the nut plates in place, and then had fit the covers on top of here. And the fit turned out perfect. I don't even have a gap around these covers at all, so it worked out really well. Now, in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have countersunk these screws. Again, it's not critical for the speed of this airplane, having the button heads showing on the top. We've got all the rivet heads up here anyway, so it's probably not that big a deal, but it might have looked nicer, although it would have been a little bit more difficult to do countersunk rivets here, because we would have had to have dimpled this panel and then countersunk the actual holes underneath this, and then put in countersunk nut plates on the back. So it would have been a little bit more costly and a little bit more work, but in the end it probably would have looked a little bit nicer, although I don't necessarily mind this. I mean, it worked out fine. So let me see here. I can't even get my finger in here to get this out. There we go. So I did want to show you. You can see down in there, and you can see the rudder pedal right there. And of course I can reach my hand down in here and pop those releases on the rudder pedal tray down in there. So I do have access to the cables right here. So yeah, it is nice having these access panels. Obviously they're not in the plans. If you're familiar with the plans, the CriCri does not have access panels here, but this is a common modification that builders are doing to be able to get down in here, especially if you have to get down there and replace any of those bungee cords. It can be very difficult to try and go through the nose cone, because even with the nose cone removed, you still have the steel engine mount in the way, and you kind of need to pull that off to even get access to it, but then it's all from the front and you can't get your hands in there. So this is a good modification. The other thing too is with the canopy here, you do have access up here underneath. Oops, hold on. Up in that area there. So if a situation where you did have to get access up there, you could remove the instrument panel, you could remove the fuel tank, and you do have full access with your hands and visual access up in there to get at any kind of major repairs that you would need to do. But again, that would be a lot of work, taking the instrument panel out, taking the fuel tank out, And you know, obviously, but if if you had to do it, you could, is what I'm saying. So anyway, I did just want to show that to you also. So now that we've got these installed, the skins on, this portion of the airplane's done. As far as getting the forward skin complete, we've got everything done inside of here that needed to be accessed, such as those grommets that I put in there. So the next video, we're going to go ahead and install the forward canopy cowl here.